What is your I better get the fuck out of here now because some shit is about to go down story. I'll give you one of my dad. He was a nuclear engineer, now you know this story is headed in a bad direction for Ontario Hydro. He had made several complaints that the Pickering nuclear power plant was not updating their inspections of the heavy water containment. Nothing was done. My father knew there was going to be a high-pressure test scheduled for August. You know what he does. He scheduled his 3-week summer vacation to begin at the end of July. On August 2, 1992, Pickering had a heavy water leak. So I'm watching the evening news. The president of Ontario Hydro is giving a press conference. Everything is fine. Then as soon as that press conference is over my phone rings. It's the president of Ontario Hydro asking where my dad is. They got to figure out how to clean up this mess. I said he's camping way up in the Cape Breton Highlands of Nova Scotia. So he asks, did my dad bring his cell phone with him? And I'm looking at the cell phone sitting right there on the kitchen counter, obviously not. And even if he did bring it with him, there's no way the mountains of Nova Scotia had cell phone coverage in 1992. So he tells me to call all my relatives in Nova Scotia to track him down, which I tried, no luck. Great big nuclear spill, not his problem. And when my dad finally did turn up 2 weeks later he was all, not my circus, not my problem. Like he knew exactly what was going to happen and the people who ignored it can deal with it themselves. I was slipped a roofie of some kind when I was overseas. I was chatting up this beautiful German girl and having a good time with a small group of 2 other Americans and this girl, another female friend of hers and her male friend. The male friend was really cool and assured me they weren't an item. The group slowly dissipated and it was just me and this girl and her male friend. Can't remember what it was exactly, but something made me think okay. These 2 are a team and he is offering her as bait to rob me or whatever. Then I started feeling really out of it and weird and almost passing out suddenly from some of the drinks. I had the presence of mind to immediately grab my friend 10 feet away and basically tell him don't let these 2 out of your sight, don't let me out of your sight, you need to get me out of here safely because I've been drugged and I think I'm about to pass out and they are up to something. I was in and out of consciousness as my buddy prevented the German guy and his girlfriend from the old hey, we'll take care of him, don't worry. Routine. I paid for all my buddy's drinks the rest of the trip because he got me out of there safe and sound and I woke up in our hotel with no idea of how I got there. June of 2000 I graduated high school in California and that weekend hop on a plane to go spend a month in Athens, Greece with my cousins and aunt and uncle who work for the State Department. Being 18 and suddenly legally able to drink, I proceed to get very drunk on the flight over and have a few more during the layover in England before flying to Athens. I arrive in Athens and my uncle takes me straight to the US Embassy to meet my cousin Ian who is 17. Security is super tight because the British ambassador, Attaché the ambassador, was assassinated a week before in traffic by terrorists on mopeds. This was pre-Olympic cleanup, half Balkans half Greece. My cousin and I immediately leave the embassy as he got us tickets to see Rage Against the Machine. This ended up being like their final tour for a long time. It's bizarre, I'm 18 and out of the USA for the first time ever, just thrown into a foreign capital, but it's a blast. 8-year-olds wandering the streets selling beer, the official vendors at the venue are selling Heineken in bottles, bottled water, and handmade sandwiches wrapped in saran wrap. The venue itself, which is on a hilltop, basically the stage is set up about 20 yards from seating that looks like it's actually the remains of seating from an outdoor ancient amphitheater. So anyways, great show, having a blast, the crowd is nowhere near as packed as a US show, so can push up to the front. Only it's all US security in a foreign country, so there is no pulling down crowd surfers and kicking them out the side, they will not let anyone over that rail, except one bleeding crying girl getting crushed at one point. So I actually get to crowd surf to the front, get pushed back, and then lock my heels on the rail, and get pushed up at like a 45-degree angle with Zach like singing straight at me. So far, one of the best concerts of my life. Then things start turning. Rage makes some comments about the US government and the crowd takes protesting injustice as a sign to hate America. The Greek national crowd begins chanting "Fuck the USA, everybody say." My cousin and I take this opportunity to get out of the pit and take a break. A few songs later, we are buying fresh beers, the music cuts off, the band jumps in their van and takes off through the venue and gets the hell out of there. We wonder what's going on because it was so sudden. We see black smoke coming up from the one entrance to the venue, so we climb the hill to the chain link fence on that side of the venue to take a look. So this enclosed area is at the top of a long winding road, only way in, only way out. Right at the entrance is a restaurant. The restaurant is on fire and there is a car flipped over on fire in the street. Find out later the restaurant was Molotov by a terrorist. I forget the group name, but it was a month and day after something that had happened that day in the past. It's carnage with people running on the street and looks like a war zone. To an 18-year-old. A huge black security guard comes up to us and asks if we are American. We say yes as he is clearly by his accent. He tells us to get off the hill because he heard on the radio the cops were about to tear gas it. We ask where to go. He tells us to just get the hell out of there through the front. So we start trying to make it out through the chaos of the crowd. As we approach the only exit onto the one road out, we notice a lighter smoke haze. The cops have tear gassed the only exit. So we take off our shirts and cover our mouths and noses. Luckily by the time we get to it, it's dispersed most of the way. However, the crowd is throwing beer bottles at the riot cops, shields, batons and helmets, and trying to fight them. We get out the gate, go about 25 yards and stop to try to find my cousin's friends. We both kept our shirts off. I tucked mine into my pants. My cousin for some reason rolled his up and is carrying it. Out of nowhere a riot cop bulldozed him to the ground with his shield and starts screaming at my cousin in Greek. My cousin is confused as hell and has no idea why he is about to get beaten. I had this bizarre moment of clarity and rip the shirt out of his hand, unroll it and show the cop it isn't a weapon. The cop kicks my cousin once then moves on. We find two of my cousin's friends from school, a guy and a girl. She was French I think. I don't remember what the guy was but don't think he was American. Both spoke heavily accented English though. We are lamenting the craziness and think we are safe. All of a sudden people are screaming and running down the street from the venue and we hear a loud clacking. Step up on a car bumper and look back. The riot cops cleared the venue, formed a line, and are now marching down the street beating shields with batons. An all-out stampede starts. We run for like a quarter mile with this crush of people barreling down on us. The group gets separated. I grab the girl's hand and duck down an alley to get out of it once we lose sight of my cousin. So, like 6 hours out of the US, kick-ass show, terrorist attack, tear gas, almost beat by riot cop, stampede and now lost in the streets of Athens with a girl I don't know, my only link to anything familiar. Luckily she knows where my cousin will go. We walk for several blocks then take a cab to a park not far from my family's house, Kafisha. Something like that, Kafisha, hook up through someone else's cell phone with my cousin, proceed to refresh buzz while waiting for him to show up. One of the most memorable nights of my life 16 years later, and a total blast. Stayed barely one step out of serious shit all time. Typed on mobile with swipe, will edit when I get to a PC, edit, group claiming responsibility for the British assassination was 17 November. And it wasn't the actual ambassador, approximately 7:48 UTC +2, two gunmen on a motorcycle shoot brig. Stephen Saunders, the military attaché at the British Embassy in Athens, while he was driving alone on a busy suburban street to work at the British Embassy. The gunman escaped in traffic. Brigadier Saunders died at a hospital. Date of the concert and venue from their tour calendar. June 14, 2000 Athens, Greece, Petra Theatre. This happened about 12 to 13 years ago. I was about 10 years old at the time. Me and my father were sitting in our car, having food at a food truck. While we were sitting there, some drunk men came and parked right in front of us, blocking our way. After some time the car behind us honked so they could leave. My dad honked at the car in front of us, but they just waved at us saying they're not moving. My dad went out and told this to the car behind us. Those were two young men as well. They went and asked him to move. Drunk men again gave some vulgar sign and told them to fuck off. This dude straight up punched the window, breaking it. Drunk men came out to fight while my dad just picked me up and walked away from the scene. We were watching from a distance when a dude who was behind us took his gun out and shot the drunk car guy in the head point blank. Then they calmly walked back to their car and, since everyone ran away, backed up their car and went their way. I have a few more, but this was on top of my mind. I was visiting Belgium with my dad a couple of years back. I love arcades and found one in Euston where we were staying. I was spending a couple of hours of my free time in there while my dad was round the corner in a sports bar watching football. I was playing a game of pinball when I noticed this guy who was just hanging around near me, not really doing anything. Just staring in another direction towards some games. I finished my game and started to leave. He followed me. I noticed this and stopped and pretended to browse some of the prizes you can win with tickets. He stopped as well and pretended to look around. At this point I swiftly walked straight out the arcade. He followed me, and as soon as we were on the street a guy leaning against the wall joined up with him and followed me about 10 feet back. These two were the worst muggers ever, and I picked up on it straight away. They were obviously thinking I was going to walk home if I was local and even lived there and wait until we got out of the city center to try something. I went round the bend at the end of the road and straight into the sports bar where my dad was. They didn't follow me in and just kept walking past. I breathed a sigh of relief and enjoyed the rest of my evening. Edit, judging by the PMs I'm getting, Belgium has some sort of pedophile problem I'm not aware of. Yeah, okay guys, it's a joke from in Bruges, thanks. I was driving back to school after Thanksgiving break in the rain about 8 years ago, and as I pass by an exit I see a pickup coming down the entrance ramp next to me really fast, like recklessly fast. I think to myself I better get ahead of this guy so I don't have to deal with merging with him, so I put my foot on the gas. About 10 seconds later I look in my rearview mirror to see the pickup about 100 feet behind me spinning across all 4 lanes. Then the semi which was trying to swerve to avoid him collides and smashes him straight into the barrier as it turns fully sideways across the highway. Huge bang sound as the pickup basically disintegrated. I had to pull over at the next rest stop just to calm down. I was doing a semester abroad in London. At the time there were concerns about bombings on the underground trains. During our orientation one of our guides mentioned that if you ever heard the voice on the underground PA system ask for Inspector Sands, that was code to alert the underground staff that there was some kind of emergency without panicking the riders. One night, after class, I stopped at a restaurant, it was a McDonald's, sue me, and the cashier forgot my order, causing my meal to be delayed. Once I got my food and finished eating, I headed to the nearest tube station to board a train home and heard, playing on repeat, "Will Inspector Sands report to the office?" or something similar. I then noticed that a horde of police cars was converging on the area. I turned right the f*** around and took a bus home. Turns out it wasn't a bombing, someone had pushed someone else onto the tracks in front of a train. Still, I thought for half a second that a McDonald's cashier might have saved me from getting blown up. I was doing charity work in high school, just outside of a smaller mountain city in Guatemala, Jalapa. We took one afternoon off to head into the city and check out the markets and whatnot. Riding around the city in the bed of pickups trucks, about 15 of us, extremely common there, we noticed that there wasn't much activity and a lot of the shops were closed. A local who recognized our organization started yelling when we drove by and flagged us down, so we stopped. He was in the middle of setting up a roadblock and basically told us to get the fuck out of the city as fast as possible. Reason being, there was a big protest riot planned for that day against Canadian mining operations taking advantage of the surrounding regions. This is a small, almost third world, militaristic Central American country. Every single one of us was Canadian. We could have very easily become the perfect bargaining tool for these rebel groups. Needless to say, we got out of there as quick as humanly possible. I was at Red Rocks Amphitheater in Colorado for a Nas show. I left the concert early to grab something out of my car. On the way, I passed a suspicious-looking individual who moments later fired off a shotgun into the air. I sprinted all the way to my car. It turns out this maniac was trying to kill one of the openers, Schoolboy Q. Nobody was hurt and it barely even made the news, but a lot of people could have died if he made it inside the concert. A few years ago a friend of mine invited me to a college party at the University of Kentucky during winter break. When I arrived, he greeted me on the porch and asked if I wanted to hotbox his car. I agreed and we proceeded to go smoke a couple bowls. During the second bowl, someone ran past carrying a Christmas tree over their shoulder, jetted across the street and darted into a house. We both had a moment of "did that just happen?" before laughing and going to pack another bowl. Suddenly someone tapped on my window. My friend looked up and said, "Oh, it's cool, that's the host of the party," so I rolled down my window. The host asks, "Hey, did someone just run past here with a Christmas tree?" We laugh and say, "Yeah, he just went into that house across the street." And pointed to the house. The host says thanks. Pulls out a handgun, cocks it, marches across the street and starts pounding on the door of the house. My friend and I look at each other, say let's get the fuck out of here, and pulled away. Then we went to Waffle House and it was great. TLDR, gun pulled at a party over a Christmas tree. Still got hash browns. I was at this open-air nightclub in Montezuma, Costa Rica. The group I was traveling with went to bed, so I was at the bar by myself, drinking Imperial and taking in the scene. I was really drunk. The bar was packed and loud and hot and humid. The crowd consisted of young local guys with their girlfriends, stray dogs walking around the dance floor, and a group of high school girls, American or Canadian, with two older male chaperones, in their mid-30s early 40s. The high school girls were all dancing with the two teachers and were taking turns making out with them in a strange and systematic manner. Almost like they were brainwashed. The two teachers were having the time of their lives, glancing at each other with huge grins on their faces between make-out sessions with the underaged girls. I'm totally engrossed in their group dynamic when suddenly a military truck full of police officers with assault rifles pulls up to the bar and swarms in. All the young Costa Ricans take off running in all directions. The bar had no walls, so it emptied pretty fast. The high school's girls and their teachers ran away too. The cops sprint out of the bar, following the Costa Rican guys into the darkness. I remained glued to my bar stool, beer in hand, mouth agape, brow furrowed. By the time I realized I better get the f*** out of here, it was already over. I sat there alone, just me, my beer, and a couple stray dogs. I was at a house party with a few friends, where pretty much everyone from our college year was invited. One guy, who was affectionately called One Drink Davey, had probably downed about 2 pints of Stella within the hour, and I personally knew he was just a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. Nevertheless, we all sat down to play Ring of Fire. That's when I saw it. His hand raised to his mouth and his eyes closed. I bolted for the door. Just as I make it past the doorframe, I hear a familiar splash and everyone screaming. 15 minutes later, I thought I'd go back upstairs to assess the damage. Holy shit, it's everywhere. Not just Davies, apparently he'd started a chain with the sympathy pukers, and what I was seeing was about 5 people's worth of vomit all over poor Jane's mother's cream carpets. I've never been so glad to have been able to detect when someone's going to hurl.